Hello students, welcome to BTech 360. Every college says 100% placement. Every website also shows the highest package. But no one tells you the most important truth. Placements don't happen college-wise. They happen branch-wise. Two students can sit in the same campus, attend the same convocation, and yet walk out with different career outcomes. Simply because they choose different branches in the same college. That's why choosing a college without understanding branch-wise placements data is one of the biggest mistakes that students make. In this series, we'll go beyond hype and headlines. No cherry-pick salaries, no inflated averages, no marketing language. Because the right question is not whether this college is good or not. The right question should be, is this branch in this college good for me or not? So what we'll do now is to start looking at branch-wise placements across IITs, NITs and IIITs and understand which branch has the best prospect. Of course, many of you would already have guessed what is the best prospect, but it's very important to understand at each branch level. Because most of the choices that students make is between a branch in a particular college versus a college itself, right? And that becomes very crucial when you see the placement data. Before I move further in terms of actually presenting data, please subscribe to BTech 360 if you've not already done that. This will be a very important source for you to understand which college to go, which branch to take, and so on and so forth. So please subscribe to BTech 360 right away. Now coming back to the first thing that we're going to discuss is the computer science engineering branches and how are they performing. And for that now we actually filed RTI, Right to Information reports across all the IITs, all the NITs and all the IIITs. And we compiled and collated data for you to exactly tell you where you stand in the scheme of things. And we're going to discuss the placement, the highest, average, lowest salary, everything that you want about the computer science branch. We're going to deal with only CSE at this point in time. This way we're going to cover about 15 branches. So keep watching this space because every day we're going to release one report at least, which helps you decide which branch to take. The first thing is, what is the computer science branch? We actually have checked about 10 IITs for which we have data, 10 NITs and 3 IIITs. These are total 23 institutions. So obviously not all IITs and NITs responded, but at 23 of these institutions responding in terms of branch-wise data is good enough for us to understand and create a metric of how they perform as a branch itself. So we are right now, the data we're going to show you is about these 23 institutions, of which 10 are IITs, 10 are NITs and 3 are IIITs. What is the RTI response that we get? This is the kind of response that we get. And we got data which essentially is talking of what is the kind of average package, right, across branches. So we are dealing with computer science branch here. It is 23.37 lakh. And this is how we go about choosing, collecting and collating data and putting it together. Like for example, if you see here, materials engineering is 9.74 lakh and CS is 23.37, electrical is 23.13, civil is 12.36, chemical is 17.06 and mechanical is 14.06. So these are kind of data that we see. And right now what we're doing is we are presenting the CS branch only, which is 23.37, whatever. And that way we're presenting for 23 such IITs, NITs and IIITs. Now, we also get data of how many students actually was the intake, how many students are actually joined the college and how many actually opted for placement, because that's very crucial for you to understand how many students were placed from the number of students who opted for placement. When we looked at that data, again, the RTI response also has that specific question saying branch-wise number of undergrad students registered for placement in the academic year and branch-wise number of placements offers made to the students of undergrad programs in the relevant year, right? So in this particular case, for example, 40 students sat for placement from computer sciences engineering and 38 were placed, right? Now, if you look at, for example, chemical engineering, 28 sat for placement and 24 were placed. For civil, 20 sat for placement and 15 were placed. For electrical, 35 sat for placement and 29 were placed. For materials, 16 sat for placement and 9 were placed, and so on and so forth. So we also try to understand. So it's not just about what is the average salary and the median salary. It's also about what is the placement percentage itself. So there are two factors here. What is the placement percentages and what is the average salary. So both we're trying to cover it as much as possible. Now these are typical RTI response that we get because the questions are similar for all the IITs, all the NITs and all IIITs, and we collect information based on this. Now when we looked at that data, only for CS branch, we are now talking of only CS branch, right? IIT Bhubaneswar, the approved intake was, they actually 65 students sat for placement, 62 were placed. So placement percentage to the intake is 91.18%, but placement percentage to the registered students is 95.38%. So of the 65, 62 were placed, it's 95.38%. In IIT Kanpur, 116 students sat for placement and 113 were placed, which is 97.41% placement, right? In IIT Palakkad, 39 students were placed, of which 46 sat for placement and 39 were placed, 85% kind of placement. In Ropar, 83 sat for placement, 80 were placed, 96% placement. Gandhinagar, 40, 38, 95. Goa, 40, 39, 97.5%. Jammu, 38, 34, 89.47%, and Jodhpur 86, 85 students, 98.84%, right? That's the first part of it. Then we also looking at the maximum salary and the average salary. Maximum salary, not everyone gives it. Average salary, if you look at it, again, not everyone responds to the data as the way we want it. Some try to hold back because they might have a median salary and those kind of things. But when you look at, average salary, in Kanpur, it is 44.7 lakh. In Palakkad, it was 19.14 lakh. In Gandhinagar, it's 23.37 lakh. Right. In Jammu, it is 22.32 lakh, and in Jodhpur, it is 21.26 lakhs. That's the data that you have. Moving further, the other IITs and all, in NIT Delhi, 68 students registered for placement and all 68 were placed. 68 sat for placement and all 68 were placed, 100% placement. In Durgapur, 158 sat for placement, only 134 were placed, which is 84.81% placement. And in fact, in Durgapur, this is NIT Durgapur, if you look at it very closely, there was approved intake was 187 students who joined the college, 158 sat for placement. It is a mystery of why the 30 students did not sit for placement, and that possibly this number actually explains because they were actually not placed. So they did not even opt for placement because they were not getting offers possibly. That's a possibility, not completely, a 100% guarantee, but we've realized that whenever the placement is lesser, the number of students opting to sit out of placement is higher. There seems to be a direct correlation between the kind of placement that you have and the kind of students who are opting to opting out of placement process itself, right? Because if you have to take it from the total students who joined NIT Durgapur, only 72% students were placed. In the NIT Meghalaya, 29 students sat for placement and 22 were placed, 75.86%. But again, 33 students actually was the intake, right? Roorkela, 159 students sat for placement, 128 were placed. 80.5% placement. Dhanbad, 140 students sat for placement, 121 were placed, 92.14%. Roorkee, 108 students sat for placement, 107 were placed, 99% placement. Hamirpur, 104 sat for placement, 97 were placed, 93% placement. And Surathkal, 103 students sat for placement, 6 were placed, 93.2% placement. You also have the average salary here. Durgapur was 17.4 lakh. Meghalaya was 12.79, Roorkela was 20.35, Dhanbad was 26.73, Hamirpur was 14.83, and Surathkal was 26.85. You can very clearly see the more the legacy of the institution like Surathkal, you actually have 27 lakh. But if it's a younger institution, actually it falls down to like NIT Meghalaya is 12.79 lakh. So you can very clearly see this whole thing. And by the way, just understand, if the average is 12.7 and the highest was 51.03, you can imagine what the lowest would have been. It would have been 9 lakh rupees also. Just be careful about those kind of numbers. Right. Moving further, NIT Puducherry, Sonipat, you can actually take a screenshot of this. You will understand what I'm saying. 53 students sat for placement, 47 were placed. Average salary was 9.8 lakh. That's quite low, right? Sonipat, 110 students sat for placements, only 67 were placed, which is 60.91%, right? And the worst thing is the average salary is 13.98 lakh. MNIT Jaipur, 110 sat for placement, 85 were placed, 19.8 lakh. Vadodara, 226 sat for placement, only 134 were placed. Pretty bad numbers. For CS branch, remember this, for CS branch, 59.29% placement, 13.39 lakh being the average salary. Calicut, 150 was sat for placement, 140 were placed, 93.33, average salary was 19.21 lakh. VNIT Nagpur, 106 sat for placement, 99 were placed, 93.4%. Here, this is a good institution, so you'll actually have a 17.3 lakh, which is a decent thing that you can deal with, right? Tirupati, 50 sat for placement, 49 were placed, and 98% placement, 23 lakh being the average salary. So, essentially you have, now what we're dealing with now is the total number, which is 2188 students sat for placement, 1892 were placed. The placement percentage for CS was 86.47 and the average of the average salary is 20.35 lakh. That is a CS report card for you. So what essentially CS report card is this. The total institutes for which we consider data is 23, of which 10 were IITs, 10 were NITs, and 3 were IIITs. The approved intake was 2,332. The registered for placement is 2,188. Placement offers accepted was 1,892, which is 81.13% of the approved intake and 86.47% of the students who sat for placement, right? And the average of CTC is 20.35 lakh. That is the report card for you as far as CS branch is concerned across all IITs, IIITs and NITs. When we have 23 data set, institutions data set, typically it represents the whole, and which is where we are taking this as a given at this point in time, that if you get CS branch in any of these institutions, you know, by the way, you also have the highest, lowest and all. You also have seen how the whole thing works out. So keep that in your mind, because different colleges, different branches actually have a different conversation also. The higher the legacy, the better the conversation, and the lower the younger the institution, the lower the conversation. But overall, CS as a branch has about 87-88% placement, of which some would be 100 and some would be 70 also. And the average CTC is 20.3 lakhs, of which some would be 30 lakhs and some would be 10-11 lakhs also. You've seen that. That is what BTech placement percentages of CS branches. We're going to cover many more branches like this. Subscribe to BTech 360 if you've not already done that. And we're going to, at some point in time, release a comprehensive ebook on the placement percentage across the things. If you want, please come to Career 360 and download that. It'll be of real help for you. Thank you so much. Namaste.